everybody, and welcome to another Fri-Date episode with the wife. In these episodes, my wife and I offer an entrepreneurial couple's perspective on living a life by design instead of default. Hopefully, we'll make you laugh as we navigate the ups and downs of working together, being entrepreneurs and being parents. You may want to check out our private member community over on Patreon, where you'll get additional unfiltered content like our Fri-Date on the fly episodes and get ad-free access to all our podcasts and our monthly Zoom. If you want to check it out, head over to patreon.com/Fri-Date. That's F-R-I-D-A-T-E, no dashes, or click on the link in the show notes. All right, let's get into today's episode. Kimberly, good morning in a cafe. This is really strange. This is a weird Fri-Date, but yet here we are. I feel very comfortable right now. Wait a minute. Kimberly, golden milk latte. How are you?
I was wondering where that went. It was so obvious.
What happened?
Do you remember when we were here in 2019, we used to record Fri-Date outside at a cafe?
I do.
And the waitress would come and talk to us in the middle of it.
I do, and it was always a weird thing. You know, it's funny, when you record a podcast, there's a vibe, you know, there's like...
I caught a vibe.
I got my headphones, I got my notepad, I got my microphone, and, you know, I'm a creature of habit, and now here I am in this new environment. I feel like, you know, a baby Tarzan looking through the jungle, trying to figure out where's the branch I grab onto.
Right.
But you'll be my security blanket for this episode.
Do you think this background music is going to be a problem with copyright?
I don't know if there are copyright issues on podcasts. I don't think there are. I've never heard of anybody who's had a problem. You know why there's not?
Why?
Because they're not paid for. They're free, is my guess. But listen, I'm not your attorney. I'm not your chef. And
you are my co-host.
I am your co-host, but this is my circus and these are my monkeys. But we are not here for any of those reasons. We are gathered here today in the name of Robert Victor Anthony Murgatroyd to discuss the idea of shedding an identity and moving on to the next chapter of your life, which sounds like a good name for a podcast. What do you think?
I think that sounds like a great name for a podcast. And you know who I think would be an incredible host of said podcast with said name?
Tell me.
You.
Oh, okay. Well, then I'll get to work on that today. Ladies and germs, there will be more to come on this, but just to give you a little bit of backstory, and then we'll jump into the why behind it. Well, actually, let's just jump into the why now. I have been having a jillion conversations with people at various stages of their life. And I've realized that the number 20 keeps popping up, 20, 25. And I've been doing this for 25 years and I have a new hill to climb. I've been doing this for 23 years and I could do it in my sleep and it's easy. But I just feel called to do something else. I've been doing it for 20 years and I just want to fall in love with something new again. I've been doing it for 21 years and I am just kind of, there's got to be more to, I don't want to spend the rest of, I don't want to take my last breath doing this.
You know what's interesting is that people, when you start to think about something, right? It's like when you want to buy the Tesla and the Tesla, all you see is Tesla. Mm-hmm. You started to think about this as you're writing your book and having this kind of next chapter iteration for yourself. Then next chapter people kept showing up in your life. Like when our Patreon members, we have, if you don't know, we have a Patreon community. It's patreon.com/Fri-Date. And we have an ultimate membership. And by the way, I joke, if you're on our email list, I sent out an email. I'm like, you know, how much do you think this ultimate membership is? Like most memberships are like at least $99, a couple $100. No, our ultimate is $25 a month. And what you get with that is a monthly Zoom call and then a bunch of other stuff, connection to us and all of that. But two of our ultimate members were traveling in Florence and we decided to meet up with them and have coffee. And so we're sitting down talking to them, and they're both kind of in that stage that you're talking about. And so it was like one more representation of this next chapter.
Even yesterday, we met somebody that follows us on Instagram, and
We're
and
connected
by the way,
through mutual friends.
we're real people. So if you're
We have a revolving coffee hour.
if you're in Florence, hit us up, and we got nothing else to do.
Apparently.
We'll sit and have coffee with you. And she was talking about her husband yesterday, and they're considering moving to Italy. And she said, since I've been following you guys, I'm considering changing the location that I was thinking about and moving into maybe Florence. That's why I'm here. So we had a chat about that. But when I dug underneath the surface and we talked about, the reasons, what was precipitating such a big change from America to Italy. And she said, my husband's been doing this profession for 25 years now. And I was like, oh my God, how has this been under my nose and I haven't seen it? So,
well, I think the universe is just sending you the nudges. And so, let's talk about it. Okay. So what we think, this is a good lesson for whoever's listening about not getting stuck in the where you are. So we've had this podcast where we're crouching up on five.
Crouching?
I did. I made that up.
Crouching?
Yeah. I don't know. Encroaching, creeping.
Oh my God, we're crouching up.
Whatever. We're creeping up on 500 episodes, and we have had a lot of conversations about what direction we want to go and how we want to do it. And what we're thinking, are we telling them what we're thinking?
Care. I mean, nobody's going to steal it. If they steal it, good for
I'm
them.
not talking about stealing it. I have a more abundant mindset than that. I'm just saying, by the way, we could tell you this and then we could totally not do it. So just fair warning. But we're thinking about taking this feed and making it just a Fri-Date feed. And so only Fri-Date will be on it from, a point into the future. And then Rob is thinking about starting a new podcast with a flaming arrow
through.
No,
that's a definite. I'm in the works on that.
You are?
Yeah.
Okay. So Rob is starting a new podcast called The Next Chapter, or some version. Your Next Chapter. And I don't know anybody else who could possibly do this like you, to be honest. You are the man of you're like the Madonna. You keep reinventing yourself. And although she's kind of crazy looking right now, so maybe I don't want to use Madonna, but she's still an icon. You have reinvented yourself from chiropractor to DJ to podcast host to now you're going into the next chapter, which ironically is author. And, with each shift and each change, it requires you to peel off a previous layer of your identity and build a new layer from zero. Like you climb the hill, you get to the top, you stick your flag in, and then you slide down to the very bottom and you start like a zygote again. Baby doesn't know anything. And I just think that, number one, that takes an insane amount of courage, because a lot of people get to the top and then they just keep repeating the story and staying at the top of that hill. And two, it has to be insanely difficult to keep shedding a layer of yourself.
Well, if you think about when you are tied to something, let's use chiropractor, which I was for many years, like it or not, it had the name doctor tied to it. So there was a certain amount of cachet. You book a restaurant reservation and your identity sticks out, and having everything.
When you book a plane trip, when you're on a plane, if you, God forbid, put doctor, they call for you because someone has a heart attack and they find out you're a chiropractor. No, it's not going to work out.
Right. Is his neck hurting? No, he's not breathing. Okay.
Wrong guy.
I'm never using doctor again. So there's an identity tied to it, but even more specifically than that, there is there's a level of respect, like, I walked into the office and, my front desk, was good morning, and patients, good morning, Dr. Rob. And, you get phone calls from, whomever, can I speak to the doctor? And there's, like, it's not colonel, it's not admiral, but there's an identity that's associated with it, and you've earned it. You spent 20 years. I spent 20 years in the practice.
We spent 25 years
25
plus
years.
school. You earned it. You built it. So it's not just the phrase doctor, it's doctor. It's the level of care that you gave your patients, the lives you changed. It's the successful business owner that you were, right? And all of those things wrapped in one create a layer on you. And so how, like, then you go, okay, I remember when I asked you, I said, Rob, do you want me to maintain your license? Because when you have a license to practice any type of medicine, you have to do continuing education, you have to do all these things. And, we had already sold our clinic and moved, and I got the notice for the actual license. I said, do you want me to maintain it? And he said, no, I'm not doing it. And so there had to be some sort of an emotional shedding of a layer of no longer being the doctor.
There was.
Not even being licensed.
There
and
was.
An entire chapter of your life is like gone.
There was, but it was more, it wasn't emotional, it was fearful.
Yeah.
And it was, oh my God, if what I'm doing now doesn't work, I don't have a license to lean on to get it. And so what you're straddling is this place of, there's a book that I just got, I haven't read it yet, and it's called Stage Not Age. And so if you're listening to this, you may not resonate with 25 years of a career, but you may resonate with you're in a different stage. Perhaps the kids are leaving, perhaps you graduated college, perhaps whatever it is, there's a stage, and you're ready to go on to the next. And you got one foot in the old stage and one foot in the new stage. And usually in the old stage, you're battling complacency and boredom. But what you're meeting with that complacency and boredom is certainty and, in a lot of cases, income. Because, if you've been doing something for a while, you get good at it. But staying in the same place, your inner being knows that staying in the same place is not inspiring. And there's a part of you that deep inside wants to fall in love with something again, but you're afraid, because what if it doesn't work out? Am I any good at it? Could I do this? And so, sitting your ass on two horses is not easy. But, I remember being in the office and saying, I just want to reconnect with something that I'm excited about again. Like, I remember when I was a chiropractor in the first 10 years, I was very excited. Like, I sat there at, I didn't leave the office until 9:00 at night, because I was excited about making financial plans. I was excited about buying new furniture and painting the office and, throwing patient appreciation days. And I loved it. I was in it. But that, as all things in life do, not everything, I suppose, but for a lot of people, those things lose its shine. And if you're human, you're always in evolution. You always have a new inspiration, a new idea. And I think, battling between I think sometimes one can feel flip-floppy. Like, I went to school, I paid all this money, in this case, to get my degree, and now I'm leaving it. Well, yeah, after 25 years, yeah, it's okay.
But isn't that interesting? We get tied to this thing because you invested time and you invested money. I remember, Rob, in our, we did a virtual mastermind a couple years ago. And I remember in our virtual mastermind, we had a guy who they opened up an indoor dog park. And then the pandemic hit and there was all the things about it. And he was so committed to maintaining and making this indoor dog park a success not necessarily because there was passion about the indoor dog park, but because there was a commitment to it.
Yeah.
He invested money and time and all of these things.
Yeah, they call it sunk cost.
Yeah. But it wasn't working and it wasn't lighting them up. And we were in a pandemic and they couldn't even open. And there was all these things against it. And we had a conversation about, are you more committed to that because you put in the time and effort, or are you committed because you really want this? And they ended up, I think, selling it or closing it, which was the right choice, because having something like that requires bandwidth, right? So in the same way as you had your degree, or even I had my degree is in exercise science, okay? I literally stopped using my degree 4 years after I graduated.
Yeah.
And I remember having tremendous guilt about shedding that layer and about having this, degree and not really doing anything in that field, but it wasn't lighting me up. And so there's an element of shedding a layer that is so scary and going into a new thing. I want to talk about this for you.
Well, let me jump in with one thing that you said that's making me think of it. So a lot of what we're talking about is philosophical, right? I think anybody listening to this who's in this stage is probably nodding their head and they're going, yeah, that's me, and that's exactly where I am. But there's tactical issues, which is how do you make your new thing work with your family, as an example, if you happen to have one of those, or a spouse. When you are doing something for a while, you've worked the kinks out. You figured out what works, what doesn't work, what's a waste of time. If you're a seasoned plumber and the new plumber comes to you and says, "Hey, I'm gonna spend $20,000 on a sign outside my building," and then the seasoned plumber is like, "I wouldn't do that. I would do this," because you've worked it out. Well, and you worked it out through a lot of pain and mistakes and cost. And when you're starting something new, you've got to go through all of that again, and all of those time wasters, until you figure out how to make this thing work. And sometimes you hit a point where you go like, I just don't want to do that. Like, this is hard to do.
Well, but yes, it's so we talk with people all the time about that shift. They're waiting on that next career shift, that next chapter. What holds them back is one, fear, right? There's also an element of being on top of one industry and like at zero in the other. It reminds me of, when you're in school, and for me, I remember being in the 8th grade, and the 8th grade was the peak of middle school, right? And you're the oldest, you're the coolest, you're all the things. And you're the top of the school. And then you go into high school and you're literally like picked on. And that's what this reminds me of. It's like you're at the peak of a career, and then you say, I want something different. And you look at, okay, so if I go from being a chiropractor to hosting events in a podcast, there's a learning curve, and it's a steep learning curve. And there's also fear of failure, which I think paralyzes people, because you're so used to being in a place where you know the answer. You're that seasoned plumber, that to start over again, if that seasoned plumber had to start over again as an electrician, it would be terrifying. Now, I think one thing to look at is you bring a skill set with you, right, Rob? Like, you are a chiropractor, but you are a business owner. You knew how to get new patients. You knew how to have customer service. You knew how to do a lot of skills, not just as a chiropractor, as a doctor, but you had a lot of skills that you could then bring into your next business. And I think people often, including you, to be honest, discount that. You think you're starting from zero, but maybe you're starting from 10%. And maybe there are skills that you had in your previous career that you can bring in and will translate. For example, we have this great Patreon member. His name is Patrick, and he was an actor, and he loves the stage and he loves acting. And he's also a real estate agent. And he always saw these things as separate and different. And now with TikTok and all of these things, he's starting to build this new persona in social media. And, when we did our micro coaching, we're like, you can literally take those acting skills, that entertaining value, and bring it into the social media world.
So, yes, and that's what this new podcast is going to be about. It's going to be about taking tactical, useful strategies, tools. We'll be discussing everything that we've discussed up until this point from a philosophical level, so people have a place that they can feel that people understand them. And we'll be I'll be interviewing people who have made a transition from one stage of their life to another or are about to make a transition. I'll be doing solo episodes where I'll be talking about things that have worked for me and things that haven't worked for me. Maybe give you some encouragement along the way so that you can believe that you can do it. And if you find yourself in this place, if I can take a stab at it, my suspicion is that you are probably a mix of scared and invigorated. And both of those things are good. The scared part we can work out together because that's just a question of belief and trust in the universe and strategy. And the invigorated part is where you need to live, because that place of invigoration is source coming through you to allow you to step into this new world that you're creating for yourself. And if it wasn't for you, you probably wouldn't be getting this nudge. So that's it for this week, ladies and gentlemen. We will link up the name of the new podcast and everything when we have it. You won't see anything in these show notes because my editor listening to this doesn't even know that I'm doing this.
The editor
so
just found out.
I am sure that I'm going to get a message right after this, and they're going to go, what the fuck is going on?
But can I just say something?
Yes.
Just you being at almost 500 episodes in this podcast theme and lane, to literally be going to a brand new one and starting from zero reviews, 0 episodes, 0 everything, that in itself is a leap into fear, exhilaration. You're literally doing it just with the podcast, and that's amazing.
Well, thank you, honey. That's it, everybody. Have a great week, and we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.